downloading a movie up to 10 times faster than before. Oh, is that the one where the mom becomes a...
Yes.
So today's holiday look is for Bob. And the episode we were watching on TV today is David Koresh and the Branch Davidians.
Just plug and play. See ya, cable. 5G ultra wideband is now in more and more places. Verizon is going ultra, so you can too.
At Kroger, you can get personalized coupons on top of weekly sales for prices that are lower than low on food that's fresher than fresh. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Ready to shine from the inside out? Try Nature's Bounty Hair, Skin, and Nails Gummies. The #1 brand to support beautiful hair, glowing skin, and healthy nails. And introducing Jelly Beans with 2 times more biotin.
1993. The skirmish between law enforcement and the Branch Davidian cult results in numerous casualties, including 4 ATF agents. After a 51-day standoff, the government has had enough.
As long as we're surrounded, we're not coming out.
Concerned about deteriorating conditions and agent fatigue, the FBI suggests the use of tear gas. Newly appointed U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno approves the plan.
Day 51 started with an announcement they were going to start spraying gas in. So I put a gas mask on. We know there's none for the kids. They don't make them that small, you know. And sure enough, they start, breaching the walls.
I think law enforcement was counting on the Branch Davidians' natural parental instincts to release their children.
The Branch Davidians allegedly feel such a strong allegiance to Koresh, they refuse to leave, and the adults quickly fight back.
They were firing at the armored vehicles. FBI, unlike ATF, had a lot more than canvas tarps covering them. They were in military-style armored vehicles. Bullets were just dinging off of them.
The FBI continues to penetrate the compound and pour in tear gas.
I don't fault the FBI for being too aggressive. I mean, you just can't put up with this forever.
Unfortunately, the Branch Davidians made a choice not to release their children. They could have done it at any time, but they just didn't.
They put the children and their mothers accompanying them inside a concrete room.
They wanted to keep their children in Mount Carmel where God was in control. And if their children had to die, or if the mothers had to die, that was God's undertaking, so they were not afraid of death.
Several of us were in the chapel, and somebody yelled out, "The building's on fire."
We don't know if the fire started because the Davidians lit it on fire in a deliberate attempt to burn down the building, or whether it may have been accidentally started.
What are we supposed to do now? Pray.
All of a sudden, this smoke comes down the outside wall, and everything just turned black. Almost immediately after that, we could feel heat in the ceiling, oppressive heat. At one point, I heard some of the guys behind me screaming, and I knew they were getting burned. And I think that somehow galvanized me to get up and try to get out.
So what happened to David Koresh? Well, the only unequivocal truth that we have is the forensics.
David, get over here and help me with this fuel, man.
I'm on the last seal.
They're killing us.
I'm on the last seal.
What the hell are you doing? You really think that...
People icons, we also enjoy tearing them down. And Susan was the poster girl for that.
The bizarre turn of events inspired a dramatic episode of Law and Order and a dark comedic characterization of Susan Smith on South Park.
In 1995, the rock band Blind Melon even wrote a song called Car Seat, and it was all about Susan Smith.
But the question remains, how did Susan Smith turn from mom to monster? Susan's early years in Union, South Carolina are marred by several traumatic events. When she is just 6 years old, her parents, Linda and Harry Ray Vaughn, divorce.
Her parents were engaged in a very chaotic marriage.
More than once, Ray told Linda that he was going to kill her and then kill himself. And one day, he took action.
Oh my God. Ray, you scared the crap out of me. What are you doing? Ray, what are you doing? Put the gun away.
Come here.
You're scaring the kids.
He burst into the house and loudly demanded that he was going to kill himself in front of her mother and her.
It is unknown why, but Ray doesn't carry out his threat. However, in January 1978, he takes his own life by shooting himself in the chest with a shotgun.
A very traumatic, terrifying event.
Susan's mother, Linda, quickly gets remarried to Beverly Russell, a successful Republican politician and member of the Christian Coalition.
Beverly Russell, Susan Smith's stepfather, was very well known in the community. He was very high up in the Republican Party. He had a business in town.
There was no celebration and no big announcement about this wedding. In fact, they didn't even tell their kids about it for a while.
Despite the tragic loss of her father and her mother's quick marriage to another man, Susan is an outwardly happy and successful student for most of her school years.
She was doing well in school, seemed to be pretty happy, typical tween. And then her stepfather started molesting her.
Now we're on to, I think her name was
Susan,
Susan
you're such
Smith.
a beautiful girl.
Is the episode we're
But
on
I
to now.
think you know that. Come sit on my lap.
Her stepfather had begun to molest her when she was in her mid-teens, initially fondling above the waist and then below the waist. But it never got to the point of sexual intercourse.
Susan eventually reports the inappropriate behavior to her school counselor. At home, her mother allegedly chastises her for making the sexual abuse a public affair.
Now they've arrested him. We'll be the talk of the town for sure now. I didn't make it up. He touched me. Mom, he made me touch him.
When the molestations became known outside the family, her mother was very embarrassed.
From the authorities, Beverly Russell simply receives a slap on the wrist. He returns home after a few counseling sessions.
Her stepfather lived elsewhere for approximately a month and then returned and started up again molesting her.
On several occasions, Susan tries to escape the clutches of her stepfather by attempting suicide.
Her suicide attempts were cries for help, a test of whether she would be loved or whether she was worthy of being loved.
Around this time, Susan gets a job at the local grocery store and begins actively dating one of her co-workers.
Come take a break with me.
When Susan Smith starts dating, she's clearly not attracted to the right people, as a young girl should be.
Susan starts dating a coworker, but he's married.
And now having some sexual experience, she started to see men in a little bit different way and ended up losing her virginity. It's my understanding that she began sexual relations with other men as well.
Susan goes through several tumultuous relationships, but that all changes with David Smith.
David, let me introduce you to a few of our cashiers. Girls, why don't you meet David Smith?
Hi, it's nice to meet you both.
David, I'm going to expect big things from you. This is a place where you can really shine.
Maybe she was on the rebound, or maybe they liked each other. Whatever the reason, the two of them started a whirlwind relationship.
That is not Susan Smith, and what he does not want is kids. Susan Smith has 2 kids.
A fear of losing Tom leaves Susan unhinged, so she concocts a bizarre plan to win him back.
In her mind, she's thinking, wait a minute, this is a life that I'm hoping to have, and you're getting ready to wreck it. So she's thinking, no, this cannot happen. So she goes to his office to confront him.
What the hell are you doing here? Will you excuse us, please, and get the door? You look like hell.
Tom, I just can't. The letter, he can't just leave me.
Susan, we were never really a thing. For God's sakes, you got 2 kids. You should just go back home to David.
I can't. He hates me.
She's actually in a panic attack with extremely poor judgment.
Susan allegedly tells Tom about her past sexual affairs, including her relationship with her stepfather. She also allegedly claims to be sleeping with Tom's father.
She tells Tom that she's involved with her stepfather, with his father, with a number of other men.
Susan hopes that by sharing this information, Tom will see her as a woman who's desired by many different men. However, it has the opposite effect.
Susan, that doesn't even make sense. Are you saying you're screwing my father? You're crazy.
Not realizing that Tom will see her as being a promiscuous, unstable woman, rather than this desirable sex object.
I love you.
Susan, get the hell out of my office.
Hold that car up. Okay.
Angry and devastated from being cast aside, Susan is reportedly desperate to win Tom back. On October 25th, 1994, Susan appears at the door of Shirley and Rick McLeod, crying hysterically for help.
Please help me. He took them. He stole my baby. What? You have to help me. He's got my kids. He's got my car.
She's been carjacked, and her 2 little boys are missing. It's a horrifying story, and immediately the police and David show up.
Hey, ma'am, can you tell me a little bit about what happened?
I was driving my kids and I stopped at a red light.
Susan tells police she had been stopped at a red light at an intersection when a black man with a gun jumped into her car.
She was at a light there in Union. She claimed that while she was stopped, she was carjacked by an African American, that he had her drive.
She said, I was driving down the street, and all of a sudden, this black man just jumps in the car. She must be distraught. That's, of course, what I'm thinking.
At some point, he pulls over, tells her to get out. She wants to get the children out of the back of the car.
Please, I can't go.
He says there's no time for that and leaves her and drives off.
It's just gone. Tried to run. I found the nearest house I could find.
Her story is pretty vague, but that's sort of understandable because she'd just been through something horrible.
From a law enforcement standpoint, until you prove it wrong, you have to accept it. In other words, there was a manhunt.
Local law enforcement, including Howard Wells, the sheriff of Union County, immediately start an intensive investigation.
Time is of the essence. You want to act quickly. There's always an urgency in law enforcement in kidnapping circumstances.
Police question people from the black community, which heightens existing racial tensions in South Carolina.
Are you alone? Ain't nobody ever met?
They did the artist rendering of who she said had done it. You know, there were a lot of people that fit that description. A lot of people.
The African American community felt like there was this cloud over them, and you just sort of felt like this is downright racist.
Obviously, people in the black community felt hurt and scapegoated.
I guess police were just doing their jobs by going checking suspects.
The news of Susan Smith's missing children spreads rapidly. The entire community rallies around the young mother, combing the area for the boys.
There was the greatest outpouring of, for lack of a better term, volunteerism. People held vigils, people went out and physically searched.
There was a lot of people out beating the bushes, riding horses, looking for the kids and stuff like that, here and there.
Searches of the lakes turn up nothing, so divers stop looking. Meanwhile, media from across the country descend on the small town.
Oprah Winfrey, ABC, NBC, CNN, you name it, they were here, and they just kind of transformed this whole downtown into a media haven, so to speak.
Susan started doing interviews.
I want to say to my baby that your mama loves you so much.
She would make tearful requests for her children to be returned.
Your mom and daddy gonna be right here waiting on you when you get home.
As the search goes on, no one expects the horrific truth that's been hiding just beneath the surface. This program contains graphic violence and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised. For 9 days, an extensive search for Michael and Alexander Smith is conducted throughout Union, South Carolina, and the surrounding areas. The boy's mother, Susan Smith, claims they were kidnapped during a carjacking while stopped at a red light.
Out of nowhere, this black guy came up and just opened the door and jumped in the car. And he had a gun. And he had it pointed and the siren told me to drive.
Susan repeatedly appears on television to plead for her children's safe return.
Many people across the country believed her story. Why would she lie about this? But people in Union had a different idea, and a lot of them thought her story didn't make any sense.
Well, as soon as she said that an African American man had taken off with her kids, I was a little sensitive, thinking, is that really true in Union? And knowing the landscape where people live, I just don't think that happened.
Her demeanor, it was awkward. There were no tears. I mean, you know, a person just losing their kids. I mean, babies, little babies, and there was no tears or anything. And she was like, she was trying to force herself to cry.
Through it all, David Smith stands by Susan's side.
David, do you believe your wife's story?
I believe